If you are in an avoidant and anxious dynamic, the most confusing part is not the silence itself. It is the way silence changes the meaning of everything that came before it. A good date stops feeling like a good date. A warm message thread stops feeling warm. Intimacy stops feeling like intimacy and starts feeling like a trick. And then you do what anxious attachment always does when meaning becomes unstable. You start trying to stabilize it. You reread, you interpret, you calculate timing, you look for patterns, you look for proof. You look for the one sentence you can send that will force clarity to exist. That impulse is not irrational. It is a nervous system trying to prevent pain by predicting it. But in an avoidant and anxious pairing, prediction becomes the addiction because unpredictability is the drug. When connection arrives on an irregular schedule, your brain starts acting like the bond is scarce. Scarcity creates value, even when the experience is draining. So you end up attached not only to the person, but to the possibility that the next moment will finally be stable. And that possibility becomes a loop you can't step out of, because stepping out feels like giving up on the future you kept seeing during the good moments. The truth is that the loop has a structure. It is not random, it is not fate. It is not chemistry that is too powerful to resist. It is a pattern that rewards both sides in different ways. The anxious side gets a surge of relief when contact returns. The avoidant side gets a surge of relief when distance returns. Both systems get their preferred regulator, and because both people feel relief at different times, both people keep thinking the other person is the answer, when really the answer is the cycle. You are not crazy for feeling addicted. Your nervous system is doing exactly what it does in an intermittent reward environment. Now, let's get very clear about what avoidant silence is and what it is not. Avoidant silence is not always indifference. Avoidant silence is often containment. It's an internal move that says, I felt too much. I was seen too closely. I was pulled into something that might require me to maintain consistency. And my system doesn't trust itself to do that without losing autonomy. So it creates distance. That distance can look like delayed replies, vague answers, busyness, sudden coldness, or a full drop. An anxious system receives that distance as threat because anxious attachment is wired around continuity. When continuity breaks, the body doesn't calmly interpret it as a scheduling issue. It experiences it as a signal that the bond is at risk. So it mobilizes. It tries to repair the bond by increasing contact, increasing emotional signal, increasing reassurance seeking, or increasing control. And this is where two protective strategies collide. The anxious tries to close distance to restore safety. The avoidant tries to expand distance to restore safety. Both believe they are protecting themselves. Both end up hurting the bond. And here's the part you need to hear without any shame attached to it. The anxious attempt to restore contact often intensifies the very sensation the avoidant is trying to escape. Pressure, expectation, obligation, being needed, being accountable. Those words sound normal to a secure nervous system. To an avoidant nervous system, those words can feel like a trap. So the more you try to stabilize the bond through urgent contact, the more they feel like they are losing space, and the more they protect their space with silence. That is the spiral. And once you're in it, the relationship is no longer guided by choice, it's guided by nervous system reflex. You can love each other and still keep triggering each other. Love does not automatically create safety. Safety is created by predictability, repair, and boundaries that are calm enough to be followed. Now, there is a specific moment that makes this whole dynamic feel cursed, and it's the moment most people misread. The worst silence often comes after the best closeness. People think that's proof that the closeness was fake, or proof that they were used, or proof that the avoidant is heartless. But the more accurate explanation is simpler. Closeness can raise the perceived cost of the relationship. When a moment is good, it implies continuation. It implies expectation. It implies a future version of you who will want consistency. And for someone who fears dependence, the implied future is where the alarm happens. That's why the best night can lead to the coldest day. It's not that the closeness was imaginary. It's that the closeness activated a story in their body. I'm going to be expected to maintain this, and I might fail. I might be trapped. I might disappoint. I might lose myself. So the system does what it learned to do to reduce that alarm. It creates space. The anxious then experiences that space as a loss of the bond, so the anxious reaches harder. That reaching confirms the avoidant's fear that closeness becomes demand, and the avoidant creates more space. Now both people feel justified. The anxious thinks, see, they are leaving, I need to do more. The avoidant thinks, see, they are demanding, I need to escape. That's how the loop self-sustains. And here is the most important thing you can learn if you want to stop repeating this across relationships. The loop is maintained by what gets rewarded, not by what gets understood. You can understand an avoidant perfectly and still be trapped. You can empathize with their childhood, their fears, their stress, their workload, their trauma, and still be stuck. Because empathy doesn't rewrite reward schedules. Behavior does. Structure does. Follow-through does. The anxious person's pain is that they keep trying to solve the loop with meaning. They look for a reason that will calm them. But the avoidant loop doesn't calm from reasons. It calms from consequences and predictability. So the real question becomes, what are you training in this relationship? Because relationships train people, not through lectures, through patterns, through what happens next after someone pulls away. If every time they pull away you chase, you train them that withdrawal is safe and profitable. If every time they return you reset instantly, you train them that there is no cost to emotional disappearing. If every breadcrumb gets full warmth, full access, full intimacy, you train them that minimal effort restores maximum closeness. And if you do that long enough, you will end up feeling like you are in a relationship where you are constantly proving you can handle being half-loved. That is what anxious attachment starts tolerating when it is desperate for certainty. It tolerates a diluted bond because dilution feels better than absence. But dilution is what slowly ruins your nervous system. Because you are not actually calm. You are on standby. Now, let's define the anxious responses that look harmless but are actually gasoline in this dynamic. One is the check-in message that carries urgency. It can be polite, sweet, even casual, but the energy underneath it is, fix this now. Another is the long explanation. The anxious person believes if they can just explain the nuance of their feelings, the avoidant will understand and stop pulling away. But in the avoidant system, long emotional explanations often feel like being cornered. Not because the feelings are wrong, but because the delivery is perceived as demand. Another is the sudden coldness to protect pride. The anxious flips into control mode, thinking, if I withdraw first, I will feel less powerless. The avoidant experiences that as unsafe and either disappears further or reappears with small signals to regain control. Another is the peak moment move, the urge to secure the bond when things feel good. You finally get closeness and your body says, lock it in. Ask what this is. Ask where it's going. Ask if they feel it too. Ask if they're seeing other people. Ask if they want something real. Those questions are not wrong. The timing can be. The avoidant brain experiences those questions at the peak as a jump in stakes. And when stakes jump, avoidance rises. So the dynamic punishes you for trying to secure love, which feels cruel. But it's not punishment from them. It's the system reacting to pressure. Now, this is the moment I want you to really take in, because it's where power returns. Your anxiety is not a message to send. Your anxiety is a signal to slow down and use structure. If you can internalize that, you stop handing your nervous system to someone else's mood. Structure is what secure people use without thinking. It's why secure people don't get trapped in avoidant loops as often. Not because they are less loving, but because they do not reward instability. Secure people can like someone and still require consistency. They can miss someone and still not chase. They can care and still not overfunction. They do not turn uncertainty into a personal mission. They treat uncertainty as information. So, what does that look like in practice without turning you into a robot? It looks like pacing access. It looks like responding, but not flooding. It looks like matching effort instead of compensating for lack of effort. It looks like being warm without being available on demand. It looks like letting someone's behavior carry the truth instead of extracting truth with questions. That is the exit. And it is not dramatic. It is boring in the best way. It is boring because it removes the adrenaline. And adrenaline is what this loop feeds on. Now, there's a piece of this that most people don't say because it sounds harsh, but you need it said cleanly. Sometimes the anxious person becomes the relationship. You initiate, you soothe, you plan, you repair, you translate, you keep the emotional temperature comfortable so the avoidant doesn't bolt. In the short term, it can create closeness. In the long term, it creates imbalance. The avoidant starts associating you with effort and obligation, and they crave relief, so they pull away. You start associating them with scarcity and adrenaline, and you cling, because scarcity feels valuable to the anxious system. Then you tell yourself you're loyal, you're patient, you're understanding. But the lived experience is that you are constantly managing the bond, and you cannot feel chosen while you are managing. Love requires a free yes. A free yes is not a vibe. It is not a soft promise. It is not chemistry. It is behavior that keeps showing up without you dragging it forward. If someone only stays when you overfunction, you were holding them. You can hold a person for a long time, but you cannot rest while you hold. So the goal isn't to guarantee a return. The goal is to guarantee your stability and dignity. And paradoxically, that is the only environment where an avoidant can come closer with less fear, because they are not being met with chaos or pursuit. They are being met with calm boundaries. Now, I want to explain something that changes the way you interpret avoidant silence, because interpretation is what triggers anxiety. Avoidant silence often has two layers. There is the surface layer, which is the story. I'm busy. I need space. I'm overwhelmed. I'm not good at texting. I don't like pressure. Then there is the deeper layer, which is nervous system math. Closeness equals stakes. Stakes equal vulnerability. Vulnerability equals loss of control. So distance equals safety. When you see it this way, you stop taking silence as a verdict on your worth. You start seeing it as a strategy. And strategies can be responded to with structure. But here is the boundary line you must hold. You can understand someone's strategy without living inside it. Compassion does not mean compliance. Compassion does not mean you accept a pattern that destabilizes you. Compassion means you don't demonize them. Compliance is when you keep giving full access to part-time behavior. So the leverage is learning to be kind without being easy. Kind without being easy. That's the entire art of dealing with avoidant and anxious dynamics. Now, let's talk about what a real return looks like, because anxious attachment gets trapped on the word return. People call anything a return. A text is a return. A reaction is a return. A meme is a return. A late-night hello is a return. But most of those are not returns. They are probes. A probe is someone checking if access still exists without taking responsibility for the pattern. Probes are how avoidance systems maintain proximity while avoiding accountability. They want the comfort of connection without the weight of relationship. The anxious system grabs the probe like it's a rope ladder out of the pit. It climbs. It pours attention. It tries to restart closeness immediately. And then, the avoidant panics because closeness is back at full intensity. So they disappear. That's why you feel like you keep getting almost. Almost is the trap. So define return differently. A real return has initiative that is not forced. It has consistency after the return, not just a burst. And it has repair, meaning they acknowledge the distance and adjust behavior. Without repair, the pattern stays intact, and you are just restarting the same movie at a different timestamp. And anxious attachment doesn't actually want the movie. It wants safety. It wants predictability. It wants to stop feeling like it's auditioning for permanence. So you have to become someone who can let a weak return fail. That sounds scary, but it's how you stop being trained. If a return comes with no repair and no consistency, and you still give full access, you are paying for a bond you are not receiving. You are buying a feeling for a few hours. And then you crash. So calm structure means you don't crash and rebuild repeatedly. You pace. You match. You watch. You require behavior. This is not manipulation. This is the behavior of a stable person. Now, some people hear this and worry. If I do this, I'll lose them. And maybe. But here is the truth that will protect you. If the only way to keep someone is to abandon your stability, you are not keeping love. You are keeping a cycle. And cycles always expand. They don't stay at the same intensity. The longer you stay, the more you will tolerate. The more your baseline will shift. The more your self-respect will get negotiated down. That's why people wake up years later and realize they don't recognize themselves. The relationship didn't only take time, it took their center. The point of this channel is to give you your center back, not by turning you into someone who doesn't feel, but by turning you into someone whose feelings don't control their standards. Now, let's deal with the exact moment you want to send the message. It hits like a wave. You feel your chest tighten. You feel your mind race. You feel the urge to fix it now. That urge feels like wisdom. It feels like if you act now, you'll prevent loss. But that urge is nervous system activation. If you act from it, you will almost always send something you later regret, not because it was offensive, but because it was a bid for relief, not a move for structure. So you need a rule for yourself. Delay action when activated. Delay doesn't mean ignore. Delay means regulate first, then decide. When you're calm, you ask, what behavior am I rewarding if I send this? If sending it rewards withdrawal with attention, you don't send it. If sending it sets a clear standard without flooding, you can send a short line. That's the difference. Short, clean, calm. And then you stop. No follow-up paragraphs, no chasing, no trying to control how they receive it. You set the standard and you watch what they do next. Because what they do next is the truth. Now, here's a concept that will stop you from using the same old inner dialogue. Stop treating silence as a courtroom where you prosecute them or defend yourself. Treat silence as a measurement of capacity. Can this person handle continuity? Can this person repair? Can this person show up consistently when closeness increases? If not, you don't hate them. You just stop trying to build a stable home on unstable ground. That's what anxious attachment keeps trying to do. It tries to build a home on unstable ground by working harder. But hard work doesn't change ground. It changes you. It makes you exhausted. It makes you hypervigilant. It makes you smaller. The exit is to choose ground that holds you, or require ground to become solid before you build. That is what calm structure does. It requires solidity. Now, the final piece. The phrase that will change everything if you actually live it. Mixed signals are not a puzzle. They are a training environment. Whatever you reward will multiply. If you reward attention, you get more inconsistency. If you reward consistency, you get either a real return or a clean ending. Both outcomes protect you. Words without behavior do not count. Proximity without consequence is not love. Love is behavior plus repair. So when avoidant silence triggers anxious panic, remember this. The urge to chase is not a command. It is a cue to return to structure. You don't need to become colder. You need to become steadier. And steadiness is the one thing this dynamic cannot survive unless it evolves. Welcome to PsychBond. You're safe here.